My brother, Justin, made my life hell, then got my wife pregnant. Now he wants my help after our parents disowned him and left me their $2 million inheritance. My younger brother, Justin, has always harbored a deep-seated resentment towards me. If you think it stemmed from jealousy, you'd be wrong. He was the favored child, not me. There was no reason for him to be envious. To give you some context, our mother always indulged Justin. He was the golden child of our family. She cooked his meals, did his laundry, and even asked me to help him with his schoolwork. I was expected to assist him simply because we were family, but I never received the same consideration. I accepted this as I was quite independent. Perhaps it was partly my fault for always meeting his needs without expecting anything in return. He never helped me when I needed it and only approached me when he wanted something. While I was a quiet, introverted kid who enjoyed studying and keeping to myself, he was loud and rough, just like our dad. I also tend to be straightforward and honest, never sugarcoating things. I believe my mother may have developed a negative perception of me because of my straightforwardness. This favoritism made Justin the family's darling, and I didn't mind it while we were growing up. However, problems began when he started bullying and mocking me for being different from him. He would tease me about my height and the fact that I wore glasses. He would sneak into my room, read my diary, and then complain to my mom about what I had written. When I yelled at him and complained to our parents about him invading my privacy, they would laugh it off, saying it wasn't a big deal. He did more awful things, like nearly breaking my glasses and putting nasty things in my... He even once put little stones in my cereal, but luckily I found them before they could damage my teeth. When I told my mom, she dismissed it, saying this is how brothers bond. Whenever we fought, Justin would zero in on my insecurities to insult me. We went to the same school, so he knew I was being bullied by a few. Instead of supporting me, he sided with the bullies, calling me names like ugly loser or hairy monkey, and encouraging them to physically harm me, saying I was just a big failure. Another time, during a fight over something trivial that I can't even remember, he told me to kill myself. While I could easily brush off most insults, that one really hurt because I was struggling with my mental health at the time. I'm doing better now, but it was devastating to hear that my own brother wanted me dead. Since Dad was often at work and Mom didn't seem to care much, she even scolded me once, claiming it was my fault for irritating. Things progressively worsened during high school. There was a shocking incident when Justin attempted to set my hair on fire, and unbelievably, our mother defended him, claiming he was merely playing. Seriously, who behaves like that? Thankfully, my dad eventually sided with me and pointed out the gravy tie of the situation. He even threatened to call the police on Justin. This moment was a real eye-opener for my brother, as he had never faced any consequences for his actions. He was genuinely stunned, and my dad made it clear that enough was enough and that Justin needed to start respecting his older brother. Later, Dad came into my room to talk. I never expected his support because he always told Justin how similar they were, which was true. Dad admitted that he had waited for years hoping Justin would mature, but he was slowly realizing that Justin was becoming a big bully. Hearing this from my dad was incredibly validating, and I almost broke down in tears. I confessed everything Justin had done to me over the years, and even mentioned the bullying at school. My dad was shocked at how much I had endured. The next day, he spoke to the principal to ensure the bullies were warned about severe consequences if they continued. Later that evening, Dad enrolled me in MMA at our local gym, telling me I needed to man up and stand up to bullies in my... I admit that a nerdy kid like me trying to learn to fight might have seemed laughable, but I was very focused. I managed my time well to balance my studies and daily workouts, and the MMA classes completely changed my life. In physique, one day, Justin was up to his antics. He stole my pocket money, which we received for helping with chores. I had been SAVYing it for a while. Justin sneaked into my room and took it. I caught him just as he was about to cycle off with his friends. I demanded he return my money, but Justin mocked me, saying all I could do was run a daddy for... I don't know what came over me, but I punched him in the face. He was stunned, fell backward, and I retrieved my money from his pocket before throwing him back down. Justin started crying loudly, which was quite comical. However, my mother rushed out to help him and find out what happened. When she learned I had fought him, she was surprised and reprimanded me, saying I should be a better role model for Justin, who seemed to enjoy seeing me scolded. My mother also complained to my dad about my behavior, or saying I needed to be controlled. My dad grimly asked both of us to explain ourselves. I told him how Justin had stolen the money I had worked hard for and saved, while Justin tried to justify it by saying he needed the money for a date and that, as his brother, I should help him. However, Dad told Justin he was lucky I only punched him for stealing because anyone else would have called the police. He continued to tell Justin that he had no right to take others' things without their consent. Justin didn't like that and threw a tantrum, likely hoping our mother would side with him, but Dad remained firm. When Justin realized he wasn't going to be punished for being hit, he screamed how much he hated me and ran back to his room, locking himself in. Following that incident, Justin began to distance himself from me. He had finally understood that he couldn't bully me anymore and that even Dad had stopped supporting his antics. For the first time in a long while, I felt like we were equal. Though he could no longer physically harm me, he resorted to verbal insults when our parents weren't around. His behavior, or worsened with age, becoming angrier and more short-tempered each year. When I approached him with a question, he would ignore me and walk away, muttering insults like nerd or loser under his breath. If he needed to communicate something, he would relay it through our mother instead of speaking to me directly. When I questioned her about why Justin couldn't just talk to me, she would urge me to be more understanding. I couldn't tell if it was just puberty or genuine hatred. Over time, dealing with his comments became unbearable, and I longed to move out and get away from it. I repeatedly asked my mother to mediate a sit-down conversation for us to resolve our issues, but she always refused, saying she didn't want to get involved. When I asked her opinion on why Justin treated me this way, she would brush off the question. Eventually, I left for my dream university, having earned a scholarship as a top student. My dad threw a party for me, and even my mom seemed proud. However, Justin remained aloof, distant, barely acknowledging my achievements. The day I left for university was a mix of excitement for the future and relief to escape the toxic home NVY Ronman. The first few months at university were liberating. I made new friends, enjoyed my classes, and started to build a life separate from the oppressive atmosphere of my childhood. The constant fear of Justin's verbal attacks lifted, giving me a newfound sense of peace. During my second year, I met my wife, Laura, at a frat party through a friend, and we immediately clicked. Coming from a religious background, having kids outside of marriage was frowned upon. However, when we discovered she was pregnant in our final year, we decided to marry right after graduation. Our wedding was a small but joyful ceremony. Our parents were happy for us, and we enjoyed the celebration. At that moment, I believed Laura was the love of my life. I had always envied a monogamous relationship, one woman to come home to and share my life with. Despite other women showing interest over the years, I never pursued anything because I was genuinely content in my marriage. Laura was my dream girl, and I never wanted to hurt her. However, I later uncovered 2 incidents of infidelity in our marriage. One was an intermittent affair with her married co-worker that spanned several years, and the other was a brief fling with an ex-boyfriend during a VY sit. Some might think I was naive, and looking back, I can't completely disagree. Each time we separated for a while, I chose to forgive my wife. I didn't want to raise our child in a broken home and believed we could overcome these obstacles. The affair with her co-worker happened when we were young, and I attributed it to youthful mistakes and poor judgment. For a period, things seemed to get better, although I could never fully trust her again. I did my best to set aside my doubts, knowing that if I chose to forgive, I had to genuinely work toward a fresh start. It's been 4 years since her second betrayal, and I felt confident in my decision to give her another chance. Laura seemed to have changed, and we were genuinely happy, planning our family's future. However, 3 months ago, my world was shattered once more when she revealed that she had been having a long-term affair and suggested that our son might not be mine. Her words struck me like a ton of bricks. A mix of shock, betrayal, and disbelief overwhelmed me. I struggled to comprehend the enormity of her confession. In days, I managed to ask why she had kept such a significant secret and how she could have done something so devastating. Her reaction was cold and indifferent, as if she were detached from the pain she caused. Her vague responses left me with more questions than answers. It was a surreal and painful moment, confronting the shattered trust and uncertainty about my own fate. I continued to press Laura for the truth because I felt I deserved to know the father of the child I had been raising since birth. Ultimately, she admitted it was Justin, My eyes widened in shock as I asked Laura what she meant. She explained that she and Justin had become friends when I introduced her to my family, and she stayed with us from Thanksgiving until New Year's. Justin, usually cold to me, was warm and polite towards her, which made me glad because I didn't want Laura to feel unwelcome. Laura wanted to be accepted into my family, so she spent significant time with my mom whenever possible. She noticed the rift between Justin and me and questioned me about it. I opened up about our strained relationship and explained that we might never repair it due to his unresolved feelings. Laura understood but started including Justin in our outings, hoping it would help us bond. Whenever we planned to watch a movie, she invited Justin, and we watched whatever he chose. During this time, Justin and I exchanged a few words, which was an improvement compared to his usual silent treatment. I remember Laura and Justin hanging out and playing video games together, but I never thought much of it. Laura told me that one day, Justin opened up to her about his struggles in a recent breakup. Feeling vulnerable, he struck up a friendship with her. She mentioned that he would harmlessly flirt with her when I wasn't around, and eventually things escalated beyond her control. The sound of my wife and brother sleeping together made me feel sick. Laura confessed that she felt guilty afterward and left him, which matched her abrupt decision to go home instead of spending New Year's with me. Although I tried to convince her to stay, she was adamant about Leah VYN. When we met back at college after the holidays, she was her usual cheerful self, so I didn't question anything. 2 weeks later, we found out she was pregnant. Laura admitted she didn't know if the child was mine or Justin, and with no way to prove it, she chose to stay with me, knowing I was the more dependable brother. This was why we got married. My world felt like it was crashing down. The son I loved might not even be mine. I asked Laura if she had been sleeping with Justin recently, and she slowly nodded. She revealed that they had always stayed in touch because their chemistry was undeniable. They would sneak off to hotels, lying to me about working overtime. She admitted that half of her business trips were actually romantic getaways. I asked why she married me if she wanted my brother, and Laura said she didn't want to be the one to break off the marriage. She saw me as a wonderful father to our son and decided to stay. In her words, she made a mistake and didn't know when to stop. I told Laura I was glad she told me the truth, but that I was going to pack up, and she started crying, asking for forgiveness, and expected me to yell at her. Instead, I calmly packed my clothes. Laura insisted that if I loved her, I should fight for her, that mistakes happen in every marriage. When she realized I wasn't going to do anything, she changed tactics, saying our son would be affected by a divorce and that children shouldn't be raised in broken homes. I reminded her that I might not even be the father, which made her cry more and accuse me of being cruel. It seemed like she believed nothing could make me want to leave the marriage. Perhaps it was partly my fault for letting things slide in the past. While I did love her, it felt more like it stemmed from thinking we had a son together and had been together since college. Laura kept insisting it wasn't too late to fix things, but I struggled to believe her and had no patience left. Trust was a major issue, and her words fell hollow. Even if I forgave her, I could never forget she slept with my brother. I've always believed in forgiving mistakes because we're all flawed, but this was beyond acceptable limits. I left her crying on the doorstep and checked into a hotel. The next day, I went straight to my parents and revealed everything about my wife's affair with Justin, explaining how they had been secretly sleeping together for years. The shock on their faces was undeniable. True to her nature, my mother initially tried to defend Justin, insisting that her boy could never do such a thing to his own brother. Determined to expose the truth, I asked my parents to remain silent and let me call Justin in front of them. I instructed them to stay quiet so I could catch Justin off guard, making him believe it was a private conversation. When Justin answered the phone, I confronted him about the affair. At first, he vehemently denied it, refusing to accept any responsibility. However, when I told him that Laura had admitted to everything, he started blaming her, calling her characterless. He claimed it wasn't his fault if women were attracted to him, and that he was the better-looking brother. I told him firmly that I would expose him to everyone. When Justin mocked me, saying no one would believe me because he was the golden child, I scoffed at his arrogance and thanked him for confirming the truth, knowing our parents had heard everything. Justin went quiet and then spluttered, tried to explain himself and salvage his... My mother, still in shock, demanded an explanation from Justin. He stuttered through a feeble attempt to justify his actions, blaming everyone else but himself and desperately trying to shift the blame onto Laura. I could see my mother, who had once been protective of her favored son, now felt a mix of disappointment and anger. In that charged moment, I felt a strange sense of vindication. For years, I had endured Justin's torment. Now the truth was out, and the roles were reversed. It was Justin who stood exposed, his actions laid bare for everyone to see. As Justin's words faltered, my father, usually reserved in his expressions, couldn't contain his disappointment. He asked me to pass him the phone and began to speak to Justin. "Justin," my father began, his voice laden with disappointment, "what you've done isn't just a betrayal of your brother, but a betrayal of this family. You slept with your brother's wife and continued the affair even after they were married. Your actions have severe consequences and have irreversibly shattered the trust we had in you. I raised both of you to value family loyalty and decency. What you've shown today defies everything I've tried to teach you." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink into Justin's conscience. "Your disregard for your brother's feelings and the lack of respect for his marriage are unacceptable. You've not only hurt him, but also torn apart the bonds that hold our family. Your mother and I are partly to blame for what you've become, but we will no longer tolerate this behavior. From today, you're cut off from the college funds I set up for you. You'll have to figure out how to pay your university fees. I will also stop funding your lifestyle. Do you think it makes you more of a man to sleep with married women? Let's see how you manage without my money." Throughout this, I maintained a composed demeanor, although I initially wanted to scream at Justin. Watching my dad punish him was the ultimate vindication. I had exposed his true nature, and it was clear he had underestimated the consequences. My mother, despite Justin's persistent protests, continued to justify him, but my father swiftly ended the call, shutting down Justin's attempts to explain away his actions. Afterward, my mom approached me and hugged me. It had been a long time since we shared such a moment, but in that embrace, there was an unspoken understanding and support amid the family turmoil. She apologized for not belying me all this time. My 14-year-old self could never have imagined this moment, being indicated and embraced by my mother. Following this, my dad helped me find a good lawyer to divorce lawyer. She and her lawyer tried to fight dirty, asking for alimony since I earned more than her. But her affair played in my... We also conducted a paternity test, and it was confirmed that Justin was indeed the father of the child. The news was incredibly painful, even worse than discovering Laura's infidelity. I was furious that the son I had loved and raised wasn't mine. However, I decided to stay strong. Laura begged me to continue citing my son, arguing he shouldn't be punished for the situation, but I couldn't bear to see him. He reminded me too much of Justin, and I hated it. After my divorce was finalized, I felt a sense of freedom wash over me as I moved into my own bachelor pad. It felt surreal to live alone since I had married so young and never really had the chance to experience independence. However, my naturally independent nature allowed me to quickly adapt to my new lifestyle, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. 2 weeks ago, my dad called to tell me he was considering changing his will because he didn't want to leave anything to Justin. My dad is incredibly stubborn, and once he decided to cut Justin out of his life, he stuck to it. Justin tried reaching out to our parents and even showed up at their doorstep begging for forgiveness, but they refused to let him in. Even my mother, who usually gave in Justin's tantrums, seemed done with him, though it must have been hardest for him. Justin never texted me to apologize for what he had done, showing he didn't regret his actions. He was just upset about being cut off from our parents. Dad told me he planned to leave everything to me, ensuring Justin wouldn't contest it later. He would leave Justin only $1. My eyes widened in shock as my dad had worked hard his entire life, including his assets, retirement fund, and life insurance. The total came to nearly $2 million. The only condition in his will was that if my dad passed away before my mom, she would continue living in their house, even though ownership would transfer to me. I didn't mind this, as I wanted to care for my mom in her final days. Somehow, Justin found out about this, and, unable to reach her parents, called me yesterday, trying to make amends. He explained how he was struggling with college, and that after Laura discovered the paternity of the child, she had been pestering him for child support. He said he had no money and was looking for part-time jobs, but couldn't find anything. He begged me to talk to our family, to start fresh, since he really needed my help. I laughed in his face and told him I was done with him. I reminded him that he should have thought about the consequences before sleeping with my wife and getting her pregnant. Justin argued that I was being unfair and that Laura was also to blame, to which I agreed. I reminded him that I had divorced her, making her his responsibility now. He shouldn't be calling me to complain about her or the child, since these were the consequences of his own actions. Justin started to raise his voice, but I interrupted, reminding him that he was no longer the favored child in the family, but the black sheep who had slept with his own brother's wife. At that moment, Justin began to cry, telling me how everyone, including our grandparents and relatives, had turned against him. While this was true, it was no longer my concern. I told him we were done and that he should never call me again, since I no longer considered him my brother. Since then, I've replayed the conversation in my mind. Despite my hatred for my brother, I had never heard him cry, at least not since we were kids. I won't lie, it did hurt me a bit to see him so helpless. So I guess I'm here to ask if I should talk to our parents about him, or if I would be wrong if I don't. Update 1. Hi everyone. Many of you have been asking why I'm no longer in contact with my son, Harold. Some have even called me cruel. I need to explain that I am not comfortable raising another man's child. This isn't a stepson situation. I was led to believe Harold was my son, only to later discover he is actually my brother Justin's son. Naturally, this revelation hurt deeply, and I cried over it for days. The main reason I don't want any contact with Harold is that I no longer want Laura in my life. If I remain connected to her child, she will find a way to re-enter my life. I need my space. You may think I'm cruel or selfish, but I can't see him ever again, at least not for a very long time. Update 2. Most of you correctly guessed that it was my mother who informed Justin about my dad changing his will, leading Justin to call me as a last resort to fix things. I confronted her in front of my dad, and she broke down, saying I had punished Justin enough and that he had learned his lesson. My dad firmly told my mother that if she believed what Justin did was forgivable, then he could no longer stay married to her, because he could never forgive such a betrayal. This threat silenced my mother. My dad made it clear that if she ever talked with Justin again, and we found out, she could pack her bags and leave. As I mentioned, my dad is very stubborn. Hopefully, my mother will learn from her mistakes. Update 3. Reddit. It's been 5 months since my last update. My relationship with my parents has improved over the past few months. My dad and I go golfing every weekend, and he treats me more like a buddy than a son. Although my mother misses Justin, she has stayed away from him. The last I heard about Justin was from my cousin, who said Justin had been asking everyone for money and eventually had to drop out of college because he couldn't afford the fees. He and Laura are VYing together, and he has a part-time job as a mechanic. Apparently, they're raising Harold together, which is a good thing, I guess. I never discussed Justin with my parents, and they don't bring him up either. For everyone asking, I'm doing quite well. I was promoted at my job 2 months ago, so my salary has significantly improved. I haven't been dating anyone as I feel I still need time and space to heal. I've been going to therapy, so we'll see how that works out. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.